Welcome to Beyond the Press Release, a production of Warcom, in which we take the time to speak with small-cap executives about recent important news and developments at their companies. With us today, I'm happy to have again Bernard Tourillon, who's Chairman and CEO of HPQ Silicon Resources. The company trades on the TSX Venture Exchange under the stock symbol HPQ. For those of you who are new to the story, that's a lot of you. This is a junior exploration company that's planning to become a vertically integrated producer of solar-grade silicon metal. Now, more than just lip service, the company is the largest holder of high purity quartz properties in Quebec. On June 29th, the company announced that lab-scale testing demonstrated the ability of the company's technology to produce high purity silicon metal greater than 99.9%. The company sent those results off to a U.S. lab, and that's what we're here to talk about today, the results from the U.S. lab testing. Bernard, welcome to the show.
Thanks, George.
All right, so you put out a press release just the other day, September 29th, that said, and I'm going to read the headline here, analysis confirms purity as high as 99.97%. Process demonstrates a significant capacity to remove impurities, and the pathway to higher purity is now being implemented. So some significant data and information here. Let's break this down. First and foremost, the most important thing we want to hear from you is, how significant is it to HPQ Silicon that you officially achieved 99.97% purity in just your first round of testing?
It's very significant. It's huge. It's never been done. That's simple as that. Basically, when you do silicon metal, when you transform quartz into silicon metal, you basically go down in purity. That's just the way the process is in the first stage. Being able to say that we go higher up in purity is already a big achievement. Yes, we started with some very pure material, so we put our own bar very high because that's the only way in a traditional process you can do it. You know, you put some high purity material and you hope not to lose too much in the process. We're completely doing the reverse. We put some high purity material and we get some higher purity material, that was the key thing we wanted to validate at this level. Okay, we can remove it. Can we remove the key impurities? And do we have a pathway to higher? So it's never been done in a direct process with such a clear timeline to commercial production. So it's a game changer.
All right, and in the press release now, you've achieved what's called here 3N technically, because it wasn't 99.99%, but Pyrogenesis, and I'm going to read a quote, an excerpt from their press release, stated, without sulfur impurities, we would have produced purity levels as high as 99.991%, which is 4N. They then went on to say, we strongly expect this issue will be addressed by merely selecting a carbon source with less variability in sulfur content. So that use of the term merely selecting, will it be that easy?
Well, it's actually even easier than this. Okay. Like in a press release, you can't dwell on all the technical issue because then you end up having a technical paper for only scientists to read. But sulfur is an easy impurity to vaporize. What happened was that we bought some material from Ashbury. It had a grade of 0.5%, which is 5,000 ppm of sulfur up to, all right? We send the material to the NRS lab to get an idea what was the purity level into it. Our luck is because it's not, how can I say, it's a blended material, so you can send a small portion that's very pure, and then the portion next to it is very impure. So that's where we got suddenly surprised, and we figured out, okay, it's the carbon, it's 5,000 ppm. And when we were doing the test, in the first series of 15 tests, the phase 1 test, they were not cranking up the machine to the ultimate level. I think the longest they ran the machine was 30 minutes, all right? And then not even at the maximum power it can go, and it was looking to go and doing these type of things. So, and when we say it's achievable, there's multiple reasons why we know it can be achieved. First of all, sulfur is very easy to volatilize, and since you get volatilization going on, since we didn't expect, based on the result of the entrance data to get that, we didn't plan that in the test results. So that was one of the unknown, which is not a big issue because we know that the contamination is going to come both from our carbon source and from our quartz. But the key point is our system can eliminate that, all right? So if you look in the reality, if you start with a material at 5,000 ppm of sulfur and you go down what we end up having at the end, we've removed 99.94%. So it's like we know we can remove it all. And we have other we have other tests where we basically have, when we use different carbon, we have other tests where there's almost no sulfur left into it. So that's why we said, so in reality we did achieve 4N. Just sulfur was one of those outliers and we can't really say it, but for us internally, says yeah, okay, we got 4N.
Well, so, and that was my next question. So does this make 4N fait accompli?
Well, it makes a fait accompli for us, but scientifically speaking, we didn't achieve it. That's just the way. That's just the way it is in life. It's like, we know it's there. It's, how can I say it? It's not really the next threshold I'm fighting for. The next threshold is going to be 5N, 6N, but it might actually be more. Will be more working on the boron and the phosphate. And I'll talk more about this later.
So let's talk about that. So you said, so 4N looks like it's, you're going to get there. You're looking for higher levels of purity. You just said 5N, 6N. So let's talk about, you say in the press release that pathway to higher purity is being implemented in the next round of tests. How clear is that pathway? In other words, are these tweaks to the process really that simple?
Yes, but because from everything I've read and I understand, it's a question of time under heat and maintaining the heat in the vacuum. All right. That's really the key part of the process. And then once we start modifying the system to make the lab scale system resemble more and more a pilot plant, a mini pilot plant, then we'll get into playing with other of the special advantages that PureVap has as a patent process to get what's remaining left in impurities. So, everywhere I read in the material, it's a question of heating the thing and keeping it, working for a long time. And we see what.
And you say that because of pyrogenesis are still guys who are running the tests at the end of the day. So it's their results, their material that you're reading, correct?
Well, they do the tests to speed up because that was one of our biggest issues. Was the information loop, all right, was a little bit too slow. So we resolve all those issues to get it down to be pretty darn quick. At this moment, we focus more on the 3N plus, basically the laser system that gives us quick reading and everything else. And eventually, we will go back to figuring out the exact ends afterwards. And there's a lot of very logical reason why we're using that process right now. So. There's other things there's other goal that we're trying to attain, that purity, because we know we're going to get there. So once you understand that the PureVap process works and we validated that the science behind it works, now it's a question of tweaking it. But our tweaking is much more designed toward commercial scalability tweaking than lab scale reaching results for the sake of reaching results.
All right, so you're already this is a chess game. You're already thinking 2-3 moves ahead. You're not just thinking about 4N or 5N. You're thinking about the commercial scale and how to tweak this for commercial scale production.
You're just thinking, in my mind, we have the process to get us to make solar grade material. I'm thinking more about the commercial, and we've been executing on this since we've announced the acquisition of the intellectual property, since we announced the decision to go to the pilot plant. That's basically what we're doing. For us, since we got the 3N plus results with the laser aberration, we knew that we had made something basically unique. The people have to realize that in the industry right now, okay, the best you can produce in the first transformation of quartz to silicon metal is 2N. That's the best you can produce, 2N and a half, okay? That's the best that these massive stalinistic system can do is 2N plus. Whatever you do above 2N plus requires a second step process. And because of that difficulty, the second step process they're only bother about the 9N for the electronic and the 6N for the solar. So there's this massive gap between the two that nobody can reach. And we are the first try. We're already in that gap. And we have a pathway to go to 6N. So this is why both Pyrogenesis and us believe that the pure vat process is going to become the gold standard for making silicon metal. There's no logic investing in building a traditional CIS plant when you can get the pure vat process. And luckily, you got to talk to us.
Something new, and that's pretty significant. I almost, I fear if I go into any questions about that further, you'll be talking about projections and things like that, and we can't really talk about that. But it's pretty outstanding that you have that level of confidence, both you and Pyrogenesis in the pure vat process. It almost seems like you can see the path already. You know where you're going.
Well, George, there's an article out there, okay? And there was an article in the Globe and Mail, I think September 1st. I think it was Silicor material, all right? And they're talking about, for $1 billion investment, we'll be able to reduce their cost of making solar-grade silicon metal, from metallurgic-grade silicon metal for $1 billion capital investment, all right? But they're still starting at metallurgic grade, okay? If our process, I have to say if because I'm obligated, but when we validate our process can make the solar grade system, we render that $1 billion private investment basically worthless overnight. So I don't have to go into mega projection. Okay, I've read the Silicor material. Their claim to fame is they're using an aluminum design system, which allows them to go from electric consumption of something like 75 kilowatt per hour to 115 kilowatts per hour of energy to 25. Well, that's great. But you got to add that 25, the 11 you need to transform the quartz into the silicon metal, right? Well, ours is only going to require about 11, which is because the quartz is silicon metal. So even their 25 is like nothing compared to us. Those are the scales of what we're looking at. So it's a game changer. And what's going to make it the game changer, as much as the 6N, is the scaling up. And that's why our partnership with Pyrogenesis is so important. All of our competitors who have tried being the junior space to go to vertically integrated, having developed their great process, always follow the same process. A great professor in a university lab has invented a great new process to reinvent the wheel. Okay? And it works in a lab scale. Then whenever there start to be problems, they end up having to do the scaling up. What happens is the investors that invest in those companies is paying for the learning curve of that management, that technical team, to go through the scaling up process. In our case, we have basically contracted out all that job to companies whose that specialty. They're not a university laboratory company. They basically get a system to work at lab scale.
It's their business.
That's their business model, all right? And they've said it publicly many, many times. They wouldn't have gotten involved in our project unless they knew from the get-go there was a 90% probability and higher they could scale it up. And the key and the big money is going to be in the scaling up.
Bernard, switching gears a little bit, so that was an amazing explanation of where the company and the process is at with Pyrogenesis. That was fantastic. Let's switch over to something new that appeared in this press release for the first time is the removal of impurities. You referred to it a couple times in this conversation, specifically boron, which quite frankly is an element that I bet most of us have never heard about. Is it really that big of a deal? How important is the removal of boron to the solar industry?
It's the key one, all right? If we can get down a boron down to 0.3%, which is, I think, 30 ppm, 0.3%, and we can get our phosphate down to 0.1%, whatever our purity level, then we make solar-grade material. Because solar-grade material, the entire objective of making solar-grade material is getting those two impurities down. The significance of boron is that it's a, excuse my language, it's a bitch to remove, theoretically. Not even, in reality, it is. It's, you read everywhere in the literature and everybody says, oh my God, removing boron is very difficult. And in all our literature and all our understanding of the process, our belief was that boron results should have been concentrated by 3. Why is that? is because if you look on the entire scales, I think I've explained this a few times, but in the vacuum process, there's only two impurities that have lower impurity level than silicon metal. It's titanium, and the other one is boron, right? So in titanium, as we announced, we got what we expected, a 3 times concentration, because we didn't do anything special to remove it. And we were scratching our head, what type special? Well, we got boron removed at 98%. You know, boron, we go from 83 to 98%. So, it was it was a very good result. We understand why it's happening, okay? We have a very good theoretical concept of why it's happening. And I think it's one of those advantages of doing our process the way we're doing it. The key point is because we're going directly from quartz to the solar grade material, we can get rid of the boron in phase 1. What we believe is happening is as follows. When you do typical metallurgic grade material, your impurities are concentrated by 3. So your boron's impurities are concentrated by 3, and then they get encapsulated in the silicon metal, which makes them incredibly difficult to remove. Because we're going one-step process, right, we basically remove the boron in the intermediate phase as we produce the material. So it's not encapsulated. What's left is, there's almost nothing left encapsulated. So, we're gonna see how more results, how that's going to move on. But that's really the key.
How far off are you from getting down to the removal of boron that you need?
I believe that we hit a low of 0.41. Yeah, we reach a low of 0.41 ppm. So 0.41 ppm, all right, as opposed to the target of 0.30. So 3%. So we're talking about 0.11 ppm, which we don't know how big or not big that is, but it's a pretty good starting point. It's like everybody was telling us, it's a 3 times concentration of boron is going to be issue, and I think most of the boron doesn't come from us; it actually comes from the carbon source.
So how well did the pure VAP? How much of a surprise was it that the pure VAP removed the boron impurities to this level? Did you expect this good of a result the first time around?
Nope. No. This is completely unexpected. That's and the reason why it's unexpected, as I told you, is like there should have been a 3 times concentration. If there was a 3 times concentration, we would have said, okay, it's working as according to plan. Everything is, the impurities are supposed to concentrate. So impurities are supposed to volatilize. Now, what we're discovering is that there's one impurity that was supposed to concentrate that's volatilizing up to 98%. Now let's try figuring. At one point, we'll have to start working more on that concept, because if it's easier for us to get that 0.11 ppm removed, then we can make already the solar grade material. Because in the literature, it's literally what it is. To have solar grade material, that's what you need to have.
So the thing everyone's thinking about at home right now for certain is now you went through this first round. Naturally, with anything going through something the first time around, it takes a little bit longer. You're setting up, you're calibrating. Now that you've gone through that ramp up of the first phase of testing, what's the turnaround time going to look like from here on out? Do you think you'll be able to produce samples, get results back much quicker than the first time around?
Yes, but there's a lot of tests that are being done that are related much more to the scaling up.
Right.
Like right now, one of the big goals that Pyrogenesis has is they want to make a golf ball size nugget. There's scientific reasons why they're doing this, why they're much more focusing on that. And as opposed to working on the purity level, which is fine, which is fine with me. This is why it's a 50 test program. The process is now speeded up tremendously. They can do 3 to 4 tests a week because these are now longer duration tests, between an hour to 2 hours working the system and getting it to work. As one of my directors says, they're basically every time they're pushing the material to the machine to the envelope so they can understand all the technicalities of it. And gradually what they're going to do is going to transform the lab scale machine, which contains lab scale results, to really a miniature scale pilot plant system so they can get all the information, and then that will be scaled up to the 200 ton per year. So that's much more the focus at this stage than the purity and the impurity level that we're seeking for. And I'm fine with that because the process works very quickly. Every three, they've gotten the capacity to get almost an instantaneous, quote unquote, instantaneous lecture up to 3N of purity. And then we have to decide, do we send it to the States to get the higher purity or level? Do we need to get that information or not? Okay. I'm not going to be driven on the news of trying just to get higher up results. We know how to process. We know we're going to get there at one point. Once we know the system can reproduce on regular basis, golf-sized nugget, then we'll start working on getting the purity. Because that's the biggest goal for us to attain in the other one. Because if you know how the process works, we'll get it there at the end and all the impurities. So it can be done very quickly, very slow. It's not going to be as regular, but you can be surprised at any time. That's about the best I can say. It's like that's literally what it is. We are working much more now focus on the scaling up than the purity. Within that scale, we will at one point restart to really focus more on the purity level. And the only reason is because we're extremely confident we're going to get there. That's the only reason why.
That's a pretty powerful statement, I got to admit. Let me ask you the last question. Just to get a sense of where the company is right now, if it was technically going into production tomorrow, how viable is the company at 4N purity levels? If theoretically you couldn't get any further and you're 4N, how viable is your business at that level?
I will say as one of my directors, I'm following the old Greek war philosophy. You burn your boats when you get to the other side, so you don't try to look for the background. But I think we're extremely viable at this stage, but we can know more. There's multiple reasons for that. There's still all our beautiful quartz properties that we haven't really looked at exploring. And we're sort of like thinking about developing and taking a look at that for a different reason. Is, as silly as it is, as I keep telling you, we know the pathway to getting higher purities. Well, right now we're using graphite crucibles, which are basically carbon which have impurities. Eventually, we know we'll have to move to what's called high purity quartz a crucible. Well, why the heck should I go buy it when I have high purity material on my properties? And we've been approached many times by different companies that are interested because our results are very good. So, we're going to be looking at developing this for our own internal needs and then maybe outside of other markets. That's another project we're moving on. So and we're going to be starting the marketing of the store. We got to go we got to make the turn now of the other players. We know they're following us, but we got to be more present. That's what we're going to be doing. Pretty soon I'll be updating the marketing presentation, and in that one I'll have a fun slide to add, which is really a cool one to see. You literally see in that slide the transformation from silicon to silicon carbide to carbon. It's really weird, but it's almost instantaneous. And you can see in the same image the three materials, which basically tells you the three stages of the phases, which is what tells us the process works and the purification works. It's just a question, and to get more of that material eaten up, just a question of time. So this is why it's cool. It's really fun what we have.
Oh, Bernard,
it's advancing well.
It looks like you guys are happy. It looks like you guys are incredibly confident. I'm glad to see that, and I want to thank you again because you always take the time out of your day. I know today you got a pretty full schedule, and yet you've taken time out of the day today to sit here and answer these questions. So go ahead.
Yeah, there's one thing I think we're going to have to do educational-wise as a company is go get the market to understand how come silicon metal is a clean tech. It's really a clean tech material, but it's really unknown. Because I've we started to do a little bit of, roadshow and talking to investors. And I think we spend the first half of the time getting people to realize how silicon is a crucial material. Silicon metal is a crucial material to everybody's life and the clean technology, and how our process is really going to be changing that. Because in a certain sense, we are competing against all the other clean tech minerals out there, lithium, cobalt, those type of materials. And our market is already huge. Our market's $12 billion a year, growing 6% a year compared with them. And the reality is, on the TSX, venture or regular, there's only one company that's in this clean tech material, and that's us.
That's a perfect ending point. Bernard, thanks for being here. I'm looking forward to having you on a few more times, it sounds like, before the end of 2016. Keep up the good work. You and your team have done some amazing stuff, and we want to thank you again for joining us.
No, thank you.
You've been watching Bernard Tourillon. He's chairman and CEO of HPQ Silicon Resources. The company trades on the TSX Venture Exchange under the stock symbol HPQ. You can find out more about the company at hpqsilicon.com or get over to Agoracom, where you can take a look at all the interviews that we've done with Bernard over the last year. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.